She slammed the Uber door in my face and yelled for everyone to hear. "Get your life together." I didn't respond. I just got back on my bike and pedaled into the night, humiliated. 1 year later, she stood outside my startup, applying for a job, completely unaware that the man she once mocked now owned the company she was begging to join. This is the story of how one woman's cruelty lit the fire that changed my life forever, and why I still didn't let her in. What happened next was rather unexpected. I will tell you everything. First, let me thank you for your continuous support. If you love stories like this one, support us by subscribing to this channel and comment where you are watching us from. It will be great to hear from you. Now let's jump into the details of what happened. My name's Marcus Langley, and for the longest time, I thought staying quiet was the same as staying humble. I figured if I kept my head down, did the work, and didn't complain, life would eventually reward me. I used to believe that, back when I still thought people judged you on your potential, not just your possessions. Back when I was still pedaling a secondhand road bike through the sweat-slick streets of Los Angeles, dodging potholes and half-open car doors, praying every mile didn't end in a busted rim or broken pride. I wasn't broke, not exactly. I made enough to pay rent on my studio in Koreatown, chipped in for my mom's prescriptions when she couldn't afford them, and even had some cash stashed in a sock drawer, money saved for the dream. My dream, a rideshare startup that actually served the people it claimed to help. One that worked in neighborhoods where buses ran twice a day if you were lucky, where Uber drivers canceled your ride the second they saw your zip code. That was my idea. Not flashy, not sexy, just necessary. I called it Pedal Pro. But back then, it wasn't a company. It was a sketchbook full of wireframes, a Google Doc with bad grammar and big ideas, and a whole lot of faith I couldn't always afford. I worked delivery gigs during the day, Uber Eats, Postmates, Amazon Flex when I could borrow my friend's car, and coded the app at night with cracked knuckles and tired eyes. The dream lived between takeout containers and cheap coffee, and I never asked anyone for permission. But I also never asked for pity, which is probably why that night hit so hard. I met Kira through a dating app. She had this confident smile in her photos, like she already knew the punchline to every joke and was waiting to see if you could catch up. Her bio was short, no time for boring men, and she messaged first. That alone had me thinking I'd lucked out. We agreed to meet at a rooftop bar in Silver Lake. A little out of my way, but I figured, why not? Maybe I'd have a story to tell one day. I wore my cleanest hoodie, the one without oil stains, and even borrowed a pair of sneakers from my neighbor who dressed like an off-brand influencer. I couldn't drive, my license had expired, and every dime was going into Pedal Pro, so I biked there, stashing my ride behind a dumpster like it was something shameful. The bar was packed. Neon lights, overpriced cocktails, and conversations loud enough to make your ears ring. Kira spotted me before I saw her. She waved once, then gave me a slow, skeptical look as I approached. "You didn't drive?" she asked. "No, I biked. Parking's a mess up here." She blinked. "So you don't have a car?" I shook my head, laughing awkwardly. "Not at the moment. I'm working on something bigger right now. Trying to build a startup. Transportation, actually." She didn't smile, just took a sip of her drink and scanned the room like she was already thinking of someone else. "That's cool," she muttered, but I felt the air go cold. The date lasted 15 awkward minutes. She asked no questions about the app, didn't even fake interest. At one point, she picked up her phone mid-conversation and ordered an Uber, said something about a friend texting her. I nodded, trying to save face, but I already knew. When we stepped outside, she paused by the curb, looking me up and down like I was something she'd stepped over. Then came the line, the one that etched itself into my memory like graffiti on a clean wall. "I don't date guys without cars," she sneered, loud enough for the valet to turn. Then she slammed the Uber door shut and rolled the window down just to yell, "Get your life together." I didn't argue. I didn't flip her off or scream back. I just stood there, clutching my bike like it was the only thing keeping me upright. And when the taillights faded, I got back on and pedaled through the night, not caring that my chain slipped or that my hands were trembling. That ride home felt like a funeral. Not for the date, but for the last shred of pride I'd been holding on to. I didn't tell anyone what happened. Not my friend Derek, who helped me with the app's backend. Not my mom, who still thought I had a real job. Not even my brother Calvin, who'd already called me stupid for playing tech CEO without a degree. I buried it deep, but it didn't disappear. It became a loop, a whisper in my head every time something broke or glitched or failed. Get your life together. Get your life together. Over and over. So I did, but not in the way she meant. Continuing in next message. Chapter 1 will span several messages to meet the 1,500+ word count. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. Not because I was inspired, but because sleep felt like a luxury I hadn't earned. I pulled out my phone and stared at the app prototype, still half-built, still glitchy as hell, and forced myself to make a list. Fix the driver location tracker. Add a waitlist function. Create a dummy user flow for new signups. It was ambitious, borderline delusional, but so was building anything from scratch. For the next few weeks, I became obsessed. The humiliation from that night wrapped around my ambition like barbed wire. Every time I wanted to quit, I heard her voice again, slicing through my self-doubt like a whip. I don't date guys without cars. It wasn't about her, not really. She was just the mirror, the reflection of every insecurity I tried to bury. She just happened to say it out loud. I didn't have the luxury to wallow. My savings were thinning, my laptop was one cracked screen away from dying, and I had to split groceries with my neighbor to make ends meet. But I worked. I biked deliveries from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., coding during breaks in alleyways with half-eaten burritos in one hand and my phone hotspot tethered to my laptop in the other. At night, I dragged myself back up the stairs, ankles aching, and code until my eyes burned. Then came the blow that knocked whatever breath I had left straight out of me. One night, while grabbing packages from the Amazon locker on Vermont, I saw my older brother Calvin's car parked across the street. I hadn't seen him in months, not since he laughed at my idea over Thanksgiving dinner and told me, "Black men don't get to chase dreams, Marcus. We pay bills." He called it cute when I explained Pedal Pro, said I should work in logistics or join the post office instead. So when I saw him, I almost kept walking. But he spotted me. "Yo," he called out, grinning like we'd just bumped into each other at a family barbecue. "Still delivering tacos on that Schwinn?" I forced a smile. "It's a Fuji, actually." He leaned against his SUV, sipping a bottled smoothie that probably cost more than my dinner. "You still doing that little app thing? Thought you'd be done by now." "Still at it," I said, trying to stay calm. He whistled, low and condescending. "Man, you really don't know when to quit, huh?" And just like that, the shame came rushing back, thicker, heavier. Not just from Kira, but from Calvin. From everyone who saw me as less than because I hadn't made it yet. They didn't see the hours, the bloodshot eyes, the sacrifice. They saw a guy on a bike, hustling deliveries and clinging to a pipe dream. But that night, as I rode back through downtown, weaving past brake lights and broken bottles, something inside me hardened. Maybe I didn't have a car. Maybe I couldn't even afford a lift. But I had something they didn't. Something they couldn't fake with leased SUVs and Instagram filters. I had the vision, and I wasn't about to let anyone take that from me. About a week after running into Calvin, I hit what I thought might be rock bottom. My bike chain snapped in the middle of a delivery run, right there on 3rd and Hoover, with a bag of lukewarm pad thai slapping against my back and a timer ticking down on the delivery app. I scrambled off, hands shaking, and tried to fix the chain, but it wouldn't catch. Grease covered my palms, my shirt, even my face when I wiped the sweat from my forehead. People walked by like I was invisible. One guy actually stepped over my front wheel and muttered, "You're in the way." That was the moment. Not when Kira yelled at me from her Uber. Not when Calvin laughed at my dream. It was there, crouched on the curb, with my knees scraped and my dignity dissolving under the weight of 100 tiny failures, that I felt something crack. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, defeated. Let the pad thai go cold. Let the app mark the order late, and my rating drop to trash. Because for a few minutes, I truly believed everyone else had been right. That I was wasting my time. That Pedal Pro was just a fantasy dressed up as ambition. But then, out of nowhere, this kid came up. Couldn't have been more than 12. He had a backpack, one busted shoelace, and eyes too curious for his own good. "You okay, mister?" he asked, like he was checking on a stray animal. I forced a chuckle. Yeah, just a rough day. He looked down at my bike, then at my delivery bag. You work for yourself? The question caught me off guard. Trying to. He smiled. That's cool. My uncle has a taco truck. Says working for yourself is the only way you don't end up mad all the time. Then he walked away. Just like that. Like it was nothing. But something about the way he said it, the innocence, the certainty, dug its way under my skin. He didn't see me as pathetic. He saw me as someone trying. And that meant something. More than Kira's rejection. More than Calvin's cynicism. It reminded me of why I started in the first place. Because no one was coming to fix the system. Not for people like me. So I had to build it myself. I dragged my bike home, spent the last of my emergency fund on a new chain, and made a promise I didn't say out loud. You're going to make this work, Marcus. Or you're going to die trying. That night, I added one more item to my to-do list. Build something so undeniable that even the people who laughed will one day line up for a chance to be part of it. I highlighted it in red, bolded it, underlined it twice. Then I got back to work. I didn't launch Pedal Pro with a press release or a party or even a polished pitch deck. I launched it on a prepaid phone and a Chromebook with a cracked screen, sitting at the end of a sticky kitchen table that doubled as my desk and dinner spot. There were no investors back then. No marketing team. Just me, a shaky prototype, and the echo of every person who said I wasn't built for this. The first time the app didn't crash after a full simulated ride, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding for months. I sent the test version to Derek, my closest friend and the only person who actually believed in the vision. He was a systems guy, grew up fixing computers at his grandma's house in Watts, learned to code through YouTube and stubbornness. He'd been helping me on and off for free, trading back-end work for whatever I could scrape together. Home-cooked meals, weed runs, and rides on the back of my bike when his bus ghosted him. This thing got bones, Derek said, grinning after we did a full test ride from Pico to Mid-City. Janky bones, but bones. That was all I needed. We spent the next 3 months tightening screws, fixing bugs, building out the driver registration flow, the GPS tracking, the customer rating system. It wasn't sexy, none of it was. But it worked. Slowly, piece by piece, it began to resemble an actual product. One designed for the neighborhoods the other rideshares ignored, where the streets weren't clean and the Wi-Fi was spotty, where drivers knew your cousin or your barber or your pastor. That was the heart of Pedal Pro, community mobility for people who'd been invisible too long. But while Derek and I were chasing function, the world was still chasing image. And no one reminded me of that more than my family. Still doing that little bike app? My mom asked one Sunday, spooning collard greens into a plastic container for me to take home. I smiled, trying to keep my tone light. It's actually not just bikes anymore. We're testing a hybrid model now, bike-to-car transitions in areas with poor transit access. Just had our 10th beta sign up. She nodded like I'd just said I was trying a new soup recipe. That's nice, baby. But you still making enough to live? I hated that question. Because the answer, most days, was barely. Rent was late. Groceries were rationed. And if my laptop died, the whole thing would collapse. But I couldn't say that. Not without hearing the disappointment in her voice. So I lied. We're close, I said. Really close. She smiled, but I could see it, the worry behind her eyes. The same worry she used to wear when she worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on after my dad disappeared. That's the thing about growing up poor. Even when you chase a dream, you do it under the weight of every sacrifice your family ever made. And sometimes, their love feels like pressure dressed as concern. But nobody carried that pressure like Calvin. He showed up unannounced one evening while I was eating noodles over my keyboard. Still pretending to be Zuckerberg, he said, dropping onto my busted IKEA couch like he owned the place. I didn't bother standing. What do you want, Calvin? Just checking in. Mom says you've been real focused. Thought I'd see the empire myself. I laughed, dry and tired. You're looking at it. All 300 square feet. He glanced at the code on my screen, then at the delivery bags by the door. So this is it. You're really putting everything into this. Yeah, I said. I am. He shook his head. You know what's sad? You're too smart for this. You could have gone corporate. Gotten a real job. Benefits. Hell, even a car. I didn't flinch. I'm building something. Something that matters. To who? he asked, voice rising. You think anyone cares about some broke rideshare knockoff? Uber already exists. Lyft exists. They got teams, money, infrastructure. They don't serve the people we do? I snapped. They avoid our neighborhoods. Cancel rides. Mark our zip codes as red zones. I'm building for us. Calvin stood, pacing now. You're building for your ego. You're chasing some fantasy where you go viral and prove everyone wrong. But this ain't a movie, Marcus. This is life. And life doesn't reward dreamers. It crushes them. I stared at him, jaw clenched. Maybe, but I'd rather be crushed trying than live safe doing nothing. He left without another word. I didn't cry after he left, but something inside me twisted. Because part of me, some small, bitter shard, knew he wasn't entirely wrong. The odds were against me. The money was drying up. And every time the app froze or the GPS misfired, I felt the walls closing in. But then, a week later, I got the email. Let's talk. Interested in Pedal Pro beta. At first, I thought it was spam. Some phishing attempt or another vague LinkedIn message that would ask me to join a crypto platform in disguise. But when I opened it, the name stopped me cold. Maritza Cole, VC Scout, Southbound Ventures. I read it 3 times before it sank in. A venture scout wanted to talk. Someone who looked for early-stage companies like mine and pitched them to real-deal investors. I stared at the screen so long. Derek had to knock twice before I remembered he was outside. Dude, you look like you saw a ghost, he said, dropping his backpack and flopping onto the couch. I turned the laptop toward him. She wants to talk. A scout. For Southbound. He whistled. That's major, man. You gonna call her? I didn't answer right away. Part of me was still frozen, locked somewhere between hope and fear. What if I wasn't ready? What if she tore it apart like everyone else had? Set the call, Derek said. Don't think, just set it. You've earned this. So I did. And for the first time in months, I allowed myself to imagine what it might feel like if someone, anyone, finally said yes. The Zoom call was set for 10 a.m. that Friday. I barely slept the night before. I woke up at 6, rewrote my pitch deck 4 times, cleaned my apartment like the background might judge me, and ironed a shirt I hadn't worn since my last job interview. When her face appeared on screen, early 30s, locks, glasses, no-nonsense energy, I swallowed hard. Marcus Langley, she said, smiling. I've been hearing about you. That line alone nearly knocked me over. We talked for 30 minutes. I explained the app, the mission, the user base. She asked sharp questions, penetrating, practical ones, not just about the tech, but about the why. Why this? Why now? Why you? I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told her about the neighborhoods being left behind, the bike deliveries, the slammed Uber door, even Calvin. I told her everything. And when I finished, there was a pause, long enough to make my stomach turn. Then she said, You're solving a real problem. I can't promise you funding yet, but I can get this in front of someone who matters. Just keep your expectations realistic. I nodded so fast my neck hurt. That's all I'm asking. After the call, I sat in silence for a long time. Not crying, not celebrating, just breathing. For the first time, someone with power didn't laugh. And that changed everything. That month, Derek and I pushed like hell. We cleaned up the UI, hired 2 part-time drivers from South LA who knew the streets better than Google Maps ever could, built out a referral program for riders, and launched the first limited rollout in Inglewood. 10 users, then 30, then 100. I was still broke, still hungry, still peddling deliveries at night. But for the first time, I could feel the ground shifting beneath my feet. Like I wasn't just surviving, I was starting to move. And somewhere out there, I knew Kira was still swiping on apps, still judging men by what they drove, still chasing something she didn't understand. I didn't hate her, but I never forgot. People think success announces itself with confetti and applause. But when it finally came for me, it was quiet, subtle, like a change in air pressure before a storm. It started with a tweet. Somebody named it Ghetto Techie posted a screenshot of Pedal Pro with the caption, Finally, a rideshare app that doesn't cancel on us when we put in our real address. Built by us for us. At Pedal Pro app is the truth. At the time, I didn't even have a Twitter account. Derek found it and ran into the room like we'd won the lottery. Bro, you're going viral. Like, actual viral. Look, retweets, replies, people asking if it's on iOS yet. I stared at the screen, stunned. There were hundreds of comments. A few tech bros tried to clown the UI, but the replies drowned them out. People from Inglewood, Watts, Compton, East Oakland, places nobody built for, were hyping us up, sharing screenshots of their rides, tagging friends. I think we need servers that won't melt, Derek muttered, already typing. By that weekend, our beta waitlist went from 123 users to 6,481. I sat at my kitchen table, head in my hands, grinning like I was drunk. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Local reporters reached out. One of them even called me the underdog of urban mobility. I didn't correct her. I just said thank you and did my best not to sound like a man who'd been eating tuna for the past 3 nights. Then came the email I didn't expect. Subject: Pedal Pro driver application, Kira D. At first, I thought it had to be someone else. Same name, maybe. A coincidence. But when I clicked it open, there it was, her photo, slightly older, same perfectly curated smile. And her resume, too polished for the job she was applying for. She wanted to drive. For me. I sat there, stunned. Derek looked over my shoulder and squinted. Wait, is that her? I nodded slowly. No. No way. That's the same chick who Uber shamed you. Yep. Man, life is wild. What you gonna do? I didn't answer. Not right away. Because I didn't know. On the outside, I was finally winning. Pedal Pro got a feature in Blavity, then a spotlight on KTLA's morning segment. The southbound scout who first reached out? She connected me with 2 investors, real ones, who didn't blink when I told them I still coded most of the app from a Chromebook. They asked about scale, logistics, expansion markets, and I had answers. For the first time in my life, I had answers that mattered. But inside, I was unsettled. Because Kira's name kept showing up. The application was still pending. She hadn't withdrawn it. She'd followed our Instagram account, liked a few posts, even commented under one about driver incentives. Sounds amazing. Love that this is Black-owned. Like nothing had ever happened. Like she hadn't humiliated me in public and yelled at me from an Uber like I was beneath her. And maybe that's what stung the most. Not that she applied, but that she assumed I wouldn't remember. That I'd just fold her into the system like everyone else. That I'd forget. But I hadn't. Not for a second. Later that week, I had coffee with Maritza, the scout. She wore sneakers and a blazer and carried herself like someone who could either fund your dream or bury it depending on her mood. You look tired, she said, handing me an iced oat milk latte before I could ask. Is it that obvious? It's that common, she smirked. Early-stage founders think they have to carry the world alone. I nodded, eyes heavy. Sometimes it feels like if I stop moving, the whole thing crashes. She studied me for a beat. Let me ask you something. Hypothetically, someone who doubted you, hell, mocked you, comes back asking for a job. Do you let them in? I stiffened. That's oddly specific. She shrugged. You'd be surprised how many of y'all go through the same cycles. I thought for a second, then said, I don't want revenge. I really don't. But part of me thinks if I let her in, I'm telling the world that what she did was okay. And if you don't? Maritza asked. Then I looked petty. No, she said calmly. You look like a founder who protects your company's culture. Don't confuse boundaries with bitterness. You're allowed to remember. Those words sat heavy in my chest the whole way home. That weekend, Pedal Pro hosted its first community driver day in Baldwin Hills. We rented out a church parking lot, set up shade tents, printed flyers, and offered on-the-spot interviews. The line wrapped around the corner. People smiled at me, took selfies with the banner, told me stories about canceled rides, missed job interviews, loved ones stranded. It reminded me why I built all this. And halfway through the afternoon, I saw her, Kira, standing in line, wearing heels too tall for this heat and holding a water bottle like it was a prop. Her eyes scanned the setup, and when they landed on me, on the man sitting behind the branded table wearing a Pedal Pro polo and a name badge that read founder, they widened. I watched her freeze. She didn't move for a long time. Just stood there, mouth slightly open, as if she couldn't quite believe the math. Like the guy she dismissed on that rooftop a year ago had somehow become this. And when she finally stepped out of line, I didn't follow. By the time Monday rolled around, I thought maybe that was it. Maybe Kira would take the hint. Maybe she'd slide back into the ether of awkward memories and never cross the threshold between personal humiliation and professional complication. But fate has a way of circling back, especially when you think you've moved on. That morning, I arrived at the office early. The new space, barely furnished, still smelling like drywall and ambition, sat on the second floor of a co-working building in Crenshaw. Not exactly Silicon Valley, but it was ours. A small glass door with Pedal Pro HQ printed in matte black across it. Behind that door, our makeshift command center. 2 desks, 3 laptops, a snack shelf, and Derek snoring into a hoodie on the floor. I stepped over him and booted up the system, half-focused, still sipping bitter coffee. And there it was. Her application. Still pending. Still untouched. I hovered over the screen, cursor flicking between accept and reject, like my finger had a moral dilemma. But I didn't click either. I closed the window and started answering support tickets. Easier to fix technical bugs than emotional ones. But the universe wasn't done testing me. Around 11:45, I heard the office door creak open. I looked up, expecting Derek back with bagels or a driver asking about their onboarding session. It was her. Kira. Not in heels this time. Dressed down, jeans, hoodie, sneakers. Casual enough to blend in, but not enough to hide the tension in her shoulders or the way her eyes darted around, calculating. "Hey," she said, stepping in like it was just another Tuesday. I stayed seated. "Didn't think I'd get this far," she added, smiling nervously. "Neither did I." I replied, "Cool, but not cruel." She laughed lightly, then sat across from me without asking. That alone told me she hadn't changed. "Not really. This place looks great," she said, nodding toward the logo on the wall. "I've been following the rollout. It's impressive." "Thanks," I said, offering nothing more. A pause stretched between us like rubber pulled too tight. "I didn't know this was your company," she said finally. "That makes sense," I replied. "You didn't ask." She winced. "Look, I'm not proud of how I acted that night. I was going through a lot. And honestly, I've been rethinking some stuff. My job laid me off. Rent's insane. I'm trying to pivot. Thought driving might be convenient." I interrupted. "Now that I'm the one with the keys?" Her jaw tightened. "That's not fair." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. Neither was yelling "get your life together" at someone just because they didn't have a car. She looked down, ashamed, or at least good at pretending. "I was wrong, Marcus. I know that. I do. I've been humbled, okay?" I studied her. Not the face, not the tone, but the intention. Was this regret, or just survival? Did she actually care about the mission, or was she trying to board a moving train now that it had momentum? "This isn't personal," I said slowly. "But I'm building a culture here. One where no one gets humiliated for where they started." "I wouldn't." "You already did," I cut in. "And I forgave you. But forgiveness doesn't come with a job offer." She sat there, stunned. "I wish you well," I added. "Truly. But this isn't your lane." I watched her chest rise and fall, fighting to stay composed. Then she nodded, eyes glassy but dry. "Okay," she whispered. "I guess. I deserve that." She stood. "Congrats, Marcus. Really, you made it." And with that, she walked out, quieter than the last time, but just as unforgettable. Not even 10 minutes later, the door opened again. This time, it was Calvin. I almost laughed. He wore a crisp polo, designer watch flashing under the fluorescent lights. He walked in like he'd been invited, like this office was a family cookout and not the culmination of a dream he told me to kill. "Damn, lil bro," he said, spinning slowly to take it in. "You really built this?" "I did," I said, standing now. "What are you doing here?" He smiled. "Looking for opportunity. Thought maybe we could talk." "Talk about what?" "Coming on board," he said casually. "Business development, maybe. I've got connections. Sales background. I could bring in contracts, get you in rooms." I blinked slowly, stunned by the audacity. "You mocked me for doing this," I said. "You told me I was chasing a fantasy. That was before you made it," he said, shrugging. "Now it's real. I'm just trying to help take it further." I laughed once. A hard, bitter thing. "You're not here to help, Calvin. You're here because now it's profitable." He didn't flinch. "That's business." "No," I said, stepping around the desk. "That's convenience." And I'm done giving people chances just because they share my last name. He raised an eyebrow. You serious? Dead. He studied me like he didn't recognize the man in front of him. You've changed, he muttered. No, I said. I just stopped asking for permission to be who I was always meant to be. He left without shaking my hand. And I didn't feel bad. Not even a little. I thought I'd feel lighter after that day, after shutting the door on Kira and Calvin both. Instead, I felt like I'd just walked through fire and come out with my lungs still full of smoke. Derek tried to celebrate. You bossed up, man. That was some CEO-level boundary setting. Both of them got humble. I nodded, smiled even. But inside, I wasn't dancing. Because with every win came more eyes. And with more eyes came noise. It started subtle. A few anonymous tweets. Funny how some folks forget who they were once they get a little VC attention. Heard the founder of Pedal Pro is real selective about who gets in. Black elitism is real. Not everyone has the luxury to be petty and funded. Then came the DMs. People I hadn't spoken to in years. Old classmates, cousins, even a girl who used to ignore me in high school. Reaching out like we'd always been tight. And somewhere in that wave of digital static came Kira's post. Not by name, but obvious enough. A moody Instagram story with text overlaid on a shot of her walking near a Pedal Pro banner. Crazy how some men build a business just to get revenge. But I guess that's the only way they feel powerful. It stung. Not because it was true, but because it was believable. And that was worse. I stared at the post for a long time. My phone buzzed with people forwarding it, asking if it was about me. Some joked. Some warned. A few told me to clap back. I didn't. Instead, I closed the app, grabbed my bike. The same one with the replaced chain and scratched frame, and rode. Not because I had to, but because I needed to feel the ground under me again. The air was warm and sticky. Sunset painted the skyline gold, and traffic honked like a broken metronome. I weaved through it all, past the bodega that let me post flyers in the early days, past the bar where Kira first told me to get my life together, past the stoop where Derek and I once mapped out the entire app on pizza boxes and scraps of paper. I rode like I was chasing something, or maybe outrunning it. At a red light on Jefferson, a guy tapped my shoulder. Yo, you Marcus? I turned, surprised. Yeah. He grinned. Your app saved my ass, man. My car broke down last week, and no Uber was coming to 92nd. But one of your drivers pulled up. On time. Chill as hell. You're doing good work. He didn't ask for a selfie. Didn't want anything. Just nodded and rode off on his own bike. And for the first time all week, I exhaled. Because that was why. Not the investors. Not the press. Not even the clapbacks. The people who needed it. The ones nobody built for. That was the mission. Back home, I pulled up Kira's application again. Still pending. I hovered for a while. Thought about accepting it, just to prove I wasn't bitter. Thought about writing her a message, something polite and detached. But instead, I clicked reject. Reason, not a cultural fit. No fanfare. No drama. Just a quiet decision, made with full clarity. And then I did the same with Calvin's email. He'd sent a proposal, PDF, for pages, full of sales projections and promises of family legacy. I didn't even open it. Just deleted it. Then, because I'm not heartless, I sent him one line. If you ever build something of your own, I'll invest. But I won't carry you. Not this time. The next day, we hosted a second community driver day, this time in Watts. Bigger crowd. More press. A local poet even performed at the start. People laughed. Danced. Applied. I didn't speak from a podium. I sat in a folding chair, surrounded by drivers and riders, and let them tell their stories. That was the legacy I wanted. Not clapbacks. Not revenge. Representation. Ownership. Mobility. I never expected peace to feel like this. Not triumphant. Not loud. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that sinks into your bones and doesn't ask you to perform. It had been 6 months since Pedal Pro's beta went viral. 3 since we closed our first pre-seed round. 2 since our new office opened in South LA, complete with a mural of riders and drivers we served. Real people, not stock photos. 1 since Kira's last post disappeared from her profile, like she'd decided to erase the chapter where I existed. And I hadn't said a word. Not to her. Not to Calvin. Not even to the blogs that speculated about they found her with a grudge. Let them talk. Let them guess. Because I knew the truth. And that was more than enough. Late one night, I stayed at the office long after everyone else had gone. Just me, a blinking cursor on a future product roadmap, and the sound of city life muffled by glass. I swiveled in my chair and looked out over Crenshaw, streets I used to sweat through delivering orders, now filled with drivers in Pedal Pro vests. I thought about my mom. She still didn't fully understand what I did, but she smiled differently now. Less worry, more pride. I thought about Derek, who'd gone from couch surfing to CTO with a title card and a raise we both fought for. I thought about Calvin, who never replied to my offer to invest. I knew he saw the news stories, the app updates, the billboard on La Brea. He'd been quiet ever since. Good. Some relationships don't need closure. They just need distance. And Kira? I hadn't heard from her again. But a friend told me she was posting job hunting TikToks, manifesting the soft life, talking about men needing to bring something to the table. I didn't laugh. I didn't feel superior. If anything, I felt a little sad. Not for her, but for who I used to be when I met her. That insecure, hungry version of me, just trying to be enough in a world that measured worth in miles per hour and monthly payments. But I wasn't that man anymore. I didn't need a car to prove my value. I'd built the road myself. One afternoon, a driver named Letitia came by the office. Single mom. Used to work 3 jobs before Pedal Pro. She handed me a gift-wrapped box and said, "Just wanted to say thank you. I got health insurance now, and my daughter thinks I'm a superhero." Inside the box was a custom miniature bicycle, painted gold. The kickstand worked. The tires spun. "Your first vehicle," she said, grinning. I stared at it for a long time after she left. That little bike had once been a punchline. Now it was a monument. I still rode home some nights. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to remember. I kept the bike tuned up, the tires firm, the brakes sharp, pedaling through the same streets that once broke me. Only now, I moved differently. Head high, heart steady, not chasing anyone's approval. Just motion, just purpose. I didn't ride with a rearview mirror. I didn't need one, because I knew exactly where I was going, and I knew who wasn't coming with me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud, it's growth. It's choosing yourself when no one else does. If you've ever been underestimated, rejected, or told to get your life together, share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And drop a comment. Would you have hired Kira? Or turned away like Marcus did? Let's talk about it.